Everybody's so orderly. What happened? I want to, I think we can get started with the committee meeting as a committee of one, and we're expecting to be joined by Mr. Cohen and Mr. Parks any minute. So, do we have any consent items? 4 and 5? Okay, we have none. Okay, then we'll just we'll wait for Mr. Parks and Mr. Kokorian on those two items. We can move forward with item number 1.
Item number 1 is a city attorney and Office of Finance reports relative to the ordinance necessary to establish a sales tax refund program for filming within the city.
Good afternoon, Deputy City Attorney Dan Whitley.
At Borough Office of Finance.
Just to let you know where we are, Office of Finance and the City Attorney's Office have met to discuss this proposed program and go over some ways we can implement it and some problems that we see. To give you some background, the sales tax collected by the City of Los Angeles is actually collected by the Board of Equalization. Can you not hear me? Yeah, okay. It's actually collected by the Board of Equalization by the state on our behalf and then submitted to the city at various times during the year. So the sales tax is not administered by the city really in any way. We just collect a lump sum payment at various times. So the program that we've been tentatively thinking about doing would involve the film production companies that operate in the city filing an application for a rebate of the 1% sales tax that is allocated to the city after they make a purchase of a tangible good. And what we anticipate doing if this is implemented is that they would file this with the Office of Finance together with the supporting documentation. And then the Office of Finance would have to have someone review the documentation, ensure that an eligible tangible good was purchased, that sales tax was paid within the city, and that a rebate was due to the purchaser, and then make a rebate at some point after that. And we have tentative time periods set up that seem feasible for the Office of Finance. So the difficulties that we anticipate is that because this is a tax system that's not administered by the city, we'll need to train staff to know what the issues are. The sales tax isn't applied to all purchases of goods. It's only certain tangible goods, and it can be somewhat complicated. And it only applies to purchases in the city of LA, and as you know, geographically that can be complicated. And so there will be some administrative burden on the city from administering this program. Additionally, because the tax isn't collected by the city, we're getting payments post-collection. We have some concerns about mistake and miscollection and fraud. And we'll need to have some sort of collection program afterwards for if rebates are misallocated or missent out. So we have to have some sort of program for that process, and we're trying to implement something that will work out both for the city and not be onerous on the taxpayers that are getting rebates as well. So that's where we are at this point.
So I understand the CAO projected that we make on average $2.9 million per year in sales tax and excuse me, on business tax, and a portion of that is for sales tax. So that's the portion we're looking at.
I think I would want to ask the CAO about those numbers. I'm not sure we know how much sales tax we get from film production companies. I believe that number is solely business tax, but I'd want to firm up.
The 2.9, yes, is business tax in general. You don't think it's sales tax?
I don't think any sales tax is in there. The way the sales tax is collected is at the source from when you go to a retailer, they collect the tax there. They don't keep records generally of who purchases it. So they don't know if it's a filmmaker or me who's buying it from them. So I don't think there's any easy way for us to know what the sales tax receipts that the city gets from film production companies are.
Okay. So you need additional time to work through those items?
I think that I don't know that it's even possible for us to know what the sales tax receipts are from a
Well, I understand that, but theoretically you could work through a program where film companies could submit receipts and document their sales tax payments?
I think we could. The concern from my office would be what the burden would be on Office of Finance, which I think they can talk to better than us as far as what the cost and staffing needs they would have. But as far as drafting the ordinance, certainly we can get that.
Okay, if you would,
Yes, Ed Cabrera, Office of Finance. The concerns that our office have in regards to administration is the simple fact that the program that we envision would be similar to a refund. The impediment is that unlike business tax, which for each taxpayer within the city of Los Angeles that is registered, we know exactly what their tax payments are to the Office of Finance and to the city. However, with sales tax, as Mr. Whitley pointed out, sales tax is not remitted directly by a particular film production company. Sales tax is collected by the retailer, so we don't know what any particular individual film production company or any taxpayer for that matter is paying in sales tax. The question that needs to be answered is what type of auditing mechanism could be put in place to ensure that a rebate program wherein we don't administer the receipt and collection of the funds for individual taxpayers can be ensured that there will not be abuses and that the city is not providing refunds for money that the city does not even receive or receives after the fact. The other issue that Office of Finance is looking at is staffing issues. We are looking at programs that states have with regards to film production incentives. For example, the state of California requires that participating film production companies utilize an outside CPA to do an attest function to ensure that the entity qualifies and they've met the requirements for not only staffing of their employees and expenditures for employees, but also purchase expenditures, as well as verifying that the film production did occur within the state of California, that purchases did occur within the state of California. Other states have similar mechanisms that require a outside CPA to do the vetting. As Mr. Whitley pointed out, if Office of Finance were to be involved in that vetting, that would require the use of and the diversion of revenue generating staff to audit and review these applications. So it's an issue, one, of setting up sufficient parameters to ensure that the city is actually receiving the sales tax revenue prior to refunding that to the various participants of the program, and also ensuring that there is a mechanism in place so that Office of Finance is not diverting revenue generating staff to participate in this program. Right now, the cost for a tax auditor is roughly around $80,000 on an annual basis. In terms of expenditures for that, funding that position.
a tax auditor?
Well, again, this is the collection of sales tax and the review of
Okay,
that.
when I was what we called a monitor for program services out of the mayor's office, the companies that were providing services would provide me with their receipts and I'd pay them. You know, I'd authorize the payment. So I wasn't an auditor. In fact, I was an administrative assistant.
Again, the type of tax that the sales tax is versus a business tax requires different procedures. Our clerical staff is not trained to review these types of documents and to analyze the types of transactions that in theory would qualify for the rebate.
Let's not get too complicated here. I appreciate what you're saying about staffing. I'm not trying to force this on you. But I think you're going a little overboard when you're talking about auditors and all that stuff. All we need is somebody to check the receipts and the appropriate document, which, might involve, some kind of transactional document. And then it says sales tax. and they should be able to calculate how much that is. I don't know that we have, how many transactions are we talking, or how many filming productions are we talking about that might qualify for this? Per year? I don't know that we're talking about that many. And I'm not sure. So the bottom line is we haven't drilled down as to what the administrative expense would be. But when you talk about auditors, you've lost me, because we don't need an auditor to do this.
Well, and I would agree, and that's why we've been looking at the programs that the state has, where the state does require that the participating production companies utilize an outside CPA to do the vetting process.
You don't even have to do that. We do it in CDD all the time when we contract with our community-based organizations. They get the documents for expenditures paid. We reimburse them for those expenditures, and it's done. And those are frontline administrative personnel. So typically, even management assistants do that work. But typically, it's a management assistant supervised by a senior management assistant, and we do that in the police department. We do that in recreation and parks. We do that in CDD. Let's not complicate it. The question I have is, what would it cost to administer this program? Which means, first of all, how many customers are there that would take advantage of this? And secondly, how much time would it take to evaluate those requests for reimbursement? Or rebate, I guess is the better term. We don't have those answers today, but those would be my questions. So, how would you like to proceed to get me those answers? Would you like to have some time to talk to CDD and some of the agencies that actually do monitor programs? Now, I recognize it's a different structure. This would be entirely new, and we have to kind of feel our way through this thing, but the revenue generation is not our primary goal here. The primary goal is creating jobs and getting filming to stay in Los Angeles. And so I think maybe Film LA would give us an answer as to how many production companies we might be dealing with on an annual basis, and we can come up with some kind of calculation. And whether or not we choose to accept the burden of the administrative, I think we need to have a clearer picture as to what that would be. And at this point, even though I introduced the motion, if the burden is too much, I won't even support it. So I'm on your side, sort of. Like I'm always on your side, sort of. But I do, in order for us to have a fair judgment, or for me to be able to present this to council in a realistic way, I think we need to have a better assessment of what the administrative structure would look like, what the process would cost the city, and it would be, I think, just wrong for us to take a rake out of the 1% rebate to cover the cost of administering the program. You didn't say that, so I'm assuming you already thought that process through. So we can't really generate additional revenue for this. I get
no, actually, we don't view this as a revenue-generating proposal. When I mentioned revenue-generating, that's more in terms of opportunity costs that would be lost if we had to divert revenue-generating staff to perform this function.
No, I understood you on that point. So what I'd like to do, if my colleagues don't mind, is continue this matter, and if you could drill down to get me an assessment of what it might take to manage a program like that, and then we'll see where we want to proceed from there. But I didn't anticipate this problem either, so
okay.
I'm not going to force this down your throats. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask the question?
Mr. Park?
Yes. The couple of things I'd like, as you're looking at it, and certainly we need to know how much this may cost us in the sense of revenue. But the other thing, when I read it, the couple of things that stepped out is, how do we verify the 75% filming in the city? how do we ensure that the expenditures were made in the city? And then the other one, which may be the most difficult, that it was used in film or the integral part of the production. Those are areas that I don't quite know how you do that with the sales receipt. So that would be a couple of questions I'd ask that you can let us know how we verify that.
Correct, and those are actually the concerns that we've been wrestling with in terms of setting up a verification process, and those are definitely issues that we will continue to look at and report back.
I don't recall, as I'm sitting here, whether the motion defined the types of productions that would be eligible for this. But I think one of the issues that we'll have in assessing the cost effectiveness of the rebate would be you only want to offer a rebate in instances where that rebate will influence the behavior of the production to stay here as opposed to run away. And that might be defined by the size of the budget, a variety of other different ways that you might have to do it. So this is coming back good. We need to look at it more. It's an important step to take, but I want to make sure that if we're going to be subsidizing production through a sales tax refund, that is in fact targeted at those productions that are most likely to run away versus stay here based on that kind of a thing, so a factor. So I would suggest, for starters, defining the eligible productions by, excluding the very largest budgets and excluding perhaps the smallest budgets, which are not likely to run away in the first place. But that's something that we can flesh out. And I would actually look to staff expertise to determine, how best to target those rebates.
And we would respectfully request the assistance of the CAO's office on that.
And also Film LA.
Yeah.
Film LA.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And we, how long do you think it'll take you?
I believe this is going to take some time, so a minimum of 30 days,
That's
if
fine.
not 60 days.
Okay, we'll talk to you in 25 days.
That sounds good.
Okay. I have a public comment card from Bill Raleigh. Was that regarding a specific item, or is it just a general comment? Okay, Bill is not present, so we'll assume it was a general comment. Okay, item number 2.
Item number 2 is a motion, Alarcon Han Garcetti, relative to the creation, implementation, and oversight of a film-friendly LA discount card. And basically, the motion is notes that there are several cities throughout the country that are making efforts to keep film locally, and the cities of San Francisco, Austin, and New York have all established or implemented one of these discount cards. The motion instructs our office to report back with recommendations to implement a similar card. And we're working on it. We have been in contact with Film LA, and we'll report back in maybe 30 to 60 days with recommendations.
Great. Will you be contacting the other cities as well?
Yes.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So you say 30 to 60 days?
Sure.
How about 45-ish?
45 is good too.
Oh, we need to... Okay, we can send this on to council for
Yes.
approval. Okay,
Yes.
and then ideally, we would report back to the committee. So once the council approves it, we don't have to come back to committee. You'll just go forward with the report, and then
the
expect to get
report
it
is
back in
ready, we'll
council
bring it
in
back
the
to
next
committee.
30 to 60 days.
Mhm.
Okay, then that would be the recommendation. Any objection? Not hearing any? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Parks?
I didn't quite understand what the card does.
The card is, it would provide some kind of discount
The city
to,
would generate the card or
the city would sort of manage the program. That's part of the report.
That's
But-
part of the
but
analysis.
it's people who are in the process of filming, so it could be actors, camera people, or production companies, could get discount rates at specific establishments that are designated as film-friendly and choose to participate in the program.
Right.
Okay, then that matter is sent forward to council with approval of this committee, and we can move on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is a city attorney report in response to motion Rosendahl Reyes Garcetti Corretz relative to the mechanisms necessary to enable the city's film permit process to require workplace safety in the production of all adult films. This report has also been referred to the Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee.
City Attorney ready? Doesn't look like it. What do we do now? Oh. Did the CLA have an opportunity to read the report?
We provided, yeah, we did.
Okay, so maybe you can tell us about the city attorney's report.
On February 4th, 2011, in response to revelations of communicable diseases being spread throughout the adult film community, including AIDS, the council adopted a motion Rosendahl Reyes Garcetti Corretz requesting the city attorney to report to council on the mechanisms necessary to enable the city's film permit process to require workplace safety in the production of all adult films. Additionally, the city attorney was requested to include the impact it might have to the city in terms of jurisdiction and to take into account state legislation and council action related to the same topic in 2004. The city attorney reports that there are already mechanisms in place that require permittees to adhere to regulations regarding workplace safety on all adult films. The city attorney states that while the Los Angeles Police Department has the authority to revoke the permit in the event the conditions of the permit are breached due to issues of preemption and the high level of staffing that would be required, it is doubtful that the city of Los Angeles can actively enforce the wearing of condoms on adult film sets.
Okay, it's unfortunate the city attorney isn't present. We have a number of cards on this issue. There seems to be two main issues. The first issue is whether or not the city has the legal right to enforce the statute related to workplace safety. And secondly, it's a financial issue. We haven't heard anything regarding what it would cost to develop a program and how we would generate the revenue to cover that cost if we chose to do that. So who is answering? Did we get any feedback on the financial aspect of that?
No. There
was just an assumption that we couldn't do it, so we're not going to look at
we
the
wouldn't
other
have the
part of it?
resources. And the preemption.
What if the city council disagrees with the city attorney? Which would be, of course, the first time ever in history of Los Angeles. All the real city employees are laughing, but there is a chance that the city council could disagree with the city attorney's opinion that we can engage. I mean, if, as one of the proponents of this has testified, public nudity is a state crime, but the LAPD enforces it all the time. And so one of the reasons I wanted the city attorney to be here is to explain the distinction to us.
Right.
But secondly, I still haven't got an answer to how we would conduct a program like that, and what resources, what would it cost us in terms of resources, and whether or not we would have to create new revenue streams if we wanted to enforce it. So, do we have any response on that side of the equation?
It's not included in this report, but you may want to make an instruction to the CAO to report on the cost of a possible implementation of a program like this.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, and that's exactly what I was planning on doing. So whatever we do, I plan to hold this in committee. So if we could incorporate that into the future considerations. Okay, are there any questions of committee members? Or okay, then the first thing I'd like to do is go forward with the public discussion. You've heard sort of my thoughts on this. I'm a little confused because I know there are a lot of state laws that the City of Los Angeles, and Mr. Parks, tell me if I'm wrong, there are a lot of state laws that the LAPD enforces without whether or not we have a local law or not.
Yeah, in fact, most of the laws they enforce are state laws, penal code.
So, yeah, well, and Mr. Krikorian, I have a lawyer on one side and former chief of police on the other, and they're both saying we do it all the time. So we're a little dumbfounded by at least I'm dumbfounded by the city attorney's opinion. So it really is an issue of whether or not we choose to do this as a policy, and if so, how do we pay for it? And what do we give up, or what do we create in terms of new revenue? So with that, that's the spirit of the conversation we're going to have here. We're going to continue this matter, but for those that wanted to speak, Adam Cohen, representing the Reproductive Health Interest Group.
Yes, I'm also from the Bruin side, so I apologize. USC folks.
Yeah.
But I did go to Cal, so we can have that.
Two strikes.
Two strikes.
Well, I went to Cal State Northridge, dude, so you're not doing very well.
It's okay if I begin?
Please.
So, dear distinguished committee members, my name is Adam Cohen. I'm currently a public health doctoral student with a focus in sexual and reproductive health, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the UCLA Reproductive Health Interest Group. This group has been following the issue of inadequate health and safety measures within the adult film industry for over 7 years. On behalf of the Reproductive Health Interest Group, I am here to comment on the report from the LA City Attorney concerning mechanisms necessary to enable the city's film permitting process to require workplace safety in the production of all adult films. I'd like to begin, though, thanking the city staff and members of this august committee for their interest in the health and safety concerns of a marginalized population. The city attorney report does an excellent job of outlining the current laws regarding condom use within the adult film production. However, we strongly feel that the city attorney's office has neglected to fulfill the primary task of proposing mechanisms necessary to ensure mandatory condom use. So allow me to provide a list of some cost-effective mechanisms that would greatly improve the health and safety for workers in this industry, as well as reduce what I consider the disease burden on the greater Los Angeles community. So number one, the Los Angeles Film Board, Film LA, should convene a meeting, provide written notices of producers in adult film content that the permitting process requires that they adhere to current occupational health and safety laws. Number two, when the permit is issued, the recipient must sign a statement that they will adhere to all applicable occupational health and safety laws with specific mention of bloodborne pathogen standards. And number three, prior to the issuance of a permit, producers of the adult content must submit a current injury prevention plan. Finally, Film LA should modify how film permits are categorized so that permits for adult films can be easily identified. So I ask you just in the last 15 seconds to consider the cost burden placed on the LA community for these workplace injuries. The average lifetime cost of HIV care is over $600,000. And most performers lack adequate insurance to cover this, so it gets put on the greater Los Angeles community to pay. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention that the Film LA representative was here, Paul Audley, but he had to leave because we weren't able to convene on time.
Story of my life.
We will be happy to pass this information on to Film LA so that when we have our next meeting, they can report on your considerations as well. We have Derek Allen Burtz.
Good afternoon, City Council members. My name is Derek Burtz, and in October of 2010, I contracted HIV while working in the adult film industry. Some of you guys might be familiar with the story. It was in early July that I got into porn, and so as you can tell, it's a short run. And in that short run, in my first month, I got chlamydia. And then in a period of 3 months, I got herpes, which definitely doesn't go away, which is much more serious. And then in October, I got HIV. So as you can see, in that short period of time, I was exposed to several different STDs. And unfortunately, I got HIV. And that's due to the fact that this porn industry, who thinks that testing is enough and, they do enough to get by, does enough for its performers to be safe, which is completely false. So the main issue at hand is, what is LA County doing to stop this from happening to other performers? How many times does this have to happen before something changes? Until City Council finally says enough is enough and it's time for a change. It's time for you guys to step up, come up with a system. You guys talk about, funding, how we're going to fund a program to make sure that these producers are following work safety regulations on set. I'm sure, with all the minds that you guys have and everybody in place, that you can come up with some system, because the current system is not working. It's a failed system, and it'll continue to fail until you guys step up and come up with a better system. Obviously, there's a lot of people here that, feel that your system isn't working, that the current system isn't working, and, that's a big problem. It's really unfortunate that people like me and other performers and other people are put out to these exposures and nothing's being done about it. So I just ask that you guys really take this as a serious issue and come up with a system that'll work. Thank you.
Brian Chase?
Thank you, council members. My name is Brian Chase, and I'm Assistant General Counsel at AIDS Healthcare Foundation. First, I would like to introduce a document into the council's file for this matter. This is a document that is a film permit for Khalifa Productions, which is a pseudonym used by Vivid Video, which is a very large adult film producer. This permit is already conditioned on no interior or exterior nudity or sexual activity visible or audible by the public. When I spoke with the city attorney prior to her issuing a report, I asked her to look into how that permit, how that condition came to be on these permits and how that condition is enforced. But that information was not on the final report. I also note that these permits have a $104 LA County fire review, and more importantly, an LA City Department spot check surcharge of $85. LA City Fire Department spot checks.
Can I hold you up, and I'll watch your time, but what was your comment about interior and exterior nudity? And
the film permit is conditioned on interior and exterior nudity or sexual activity must not be visible or audible by the public.
Right.
It expressly says that on the film permit. So when I spoke to the city attorney prior to issuing a report, I asked her to look into how that condition was placed on these permits.
But what is the purpose of that? I mean, why were you asking that question? What is the significance of that?
Since the issue that the city council asked the city attorney to address was the mechanisms for placing a specific condition on this type of films, it seemed to me it would be appropriate to look at how that has been done in the past. In this permit, it is conditioned on these sensible restrictions on public nudity. Again, public nudity is something that is covered by state, not city law.
Okay, now I got you. Okay.
So it seemed like a highly relevant issue to touch on. But what's also important is there's a spot check fee on these film permits already. It's a fire department spot check fee. I'm not exactly sure how anything catches on fire in an adult film set. I guess the same way as anywhere else. But if there's a fire permitting spot check fee, it seems likely that, it seems conceivable that there could also be a spot check fee to fund any enforcement mechanisms that would be required to make sure that performers are safe from sexually transmitted diseases on sites that have already been permitted by the city of LA. So anyway, I would like to introduce this into the file of the matter. Of course, how many do you need?
Minimum 4.
Got 4.
We have.
But I also want to say, having reviewed the city attorney, I don't want to take up all your time, the city attorney's report. I've been an attorney for 16 years. Prior to coming to AIDS Healthcare Foundation, I was an attorney with Landville Legal Defense and Education Fund, which is a large national gay and lesbian rights group. I've litigated multiple complex issues of constitutional law, including preemption issues. And one thing I know about them is they're complex, they're complicated. There's never a clear answer on these things. So the fact that the city attorney's report seems to so conclusively suggest that any kind of permit would be preempted, to me, is suspect in and of itself. There should be more nuance. There should be more on the one hand, on the other hand, because this isn't a settled issue of law, but it was presented as one in this report, and I think that's unfortunate. Again, thank you for your time. I just ask the council to explore any means it can to protect these folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley Lubin?
Good afternoon, distinguished council members. My name is Shelley Lubin, and I'm the president of Pink Cross Foundation, a nonprofit organization that reaches out to adult film industry workers. I'm sincerely thankful for you for even addressing health and safety in the adult film industry. Not only are these issues extremely important, but they're very personal to me. I'm also a former porn actress who was subjected to horrific work conditions, to include unsanitary restrooms, sharp objects, threatening porn producers, and bodily fluids such as urine, feces, blood, seminal, and vaginal fluids. I was forced to do sex acts I never agreed to on an unsupervised set where anything goes. I was also forced to have unprotected sex. No condoms were allowed on the set. Because of these horrific work conditions, I caught 2 sexually transmitted diseases. I was devastated, to say the least, especially when I learned that I had a non-curable disease that led to early cervical cancer, where I had half of my cervix removed. The consequences for the work conditions in the adult film industry almost took my life. But after a strong fight for my recovery from the trauma of the sex work in the adult film industry, I'm alive today and able to stand up for other adult industry workers who are too afraid or too ashamed to speak out. If you'll notice, they're not here today. Distinguished council members, adult film workers need you to take action. I urge you to draft cost-effective mechanisms within the city's film permitting process to eliminate excessive safety and health violations within the adult film industry. Swift action is needed, and we can't let this issue go until this action is taken. Thank you for caring about workers in the adult film industry. Your swift action will save many lives.
Thank you. Jenny Case?
Thank you, honorable council members. My name is Jenny Case, and I am with the Pink Cross Foundation as well. I'm also a former adult film industry worker and a voice for others who can't be here today. During my time as a performer, I was subjected to unsafe and unhealthy work conditions on the porn set. Numerous times. Condoms were not used, or any other kinds of protection. I was exposed many times to bodily fluids, such as semen, and forced into performing sex acts that I did not agree to. I acquired several urinary and bacterial infections during this time. I also had many STDs, such as chlamydia. And the chlamydia was so bad that I suffered severe pain in my abdomen and had to seek treatment that I paid for at a local clinic. And all of this took place in the city of Los Angeles. Another result of this dangerous and unsafe workplace was another trip to another clinic paid for by me, where interns were brought into the examination room to view my severely damaged cervix, which was devastating to me. And I'm asking you today to please do whatever you can to enforce protection of these workers. This industry is not doing a good job of policing itself right now. So please don't let these human beings fall through the cracks. These are not throwaway people, and we will not stop speaking out until action has been taken. Thank you very much for enforcing this and for listening to us today.
Thank you. James Clark?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Council Member. My name is James Clark. I'm with Cal OSHA. I'm a staff lawyer for Cal OSHA. I have been drafting a opinion letter that deals with the preemption issue. We come down differently than the city attorney does with respect, and we are featured by just a bare outline that I can give you right now that I hope will answer some of your questions, Mr. Chairman. We began with the presumption that when the city works within the zoning area, there is no presumption. There is a presumption, there is no preemption. So that when the courts take a look at the city's action and it deals with such things as zoning, it is clear that the courts will give, if you will, preference to the city's position. In addition to that, there are sections of the Labor Code that clearly allow for local enforcement, as the city attorney did point out, of Cal OSHA standards themselves by agreement. But in addition to that, the section also states that nothing in that section prohibits the city from doing what it ordinarily would do within its own jurisdiction. So that if there are some safety features included in any film permit, whether those are in agreement with Cal OSHA standards or not, the city is perfectly free to do what it ought to do within its own jurisdiction. Finally, there is a section in the Labor Code that also states that nothing that we do in terms of enforcing our standards will prohibit you from exercising that zoning jurisdiction. So with that brief outline, I conclude that in fact there is no preemption, and we will be forwarding you, I believe, an opinion when the time comes.
Well, thank you. I look forward to receiving that document. Mr. Krikorian, yes, and let me explain. I really don't consider you to be making public comment. You're an expert, sort of an expert witness in this matter, and relative to the issue of labor and statutory preemptions versus local jurisdiction. So there's no time limit on you.
Right, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments, and I'm looking forward to seeing your opinion and analysis when it's completed. I know that I had occasion to meet Ms. Lubin in Sacramento when she and Pink Cross were there working on state legislation related to this issue. And I'm wondering what the current state of legislative action is in this area. Has there been, for example, when there is a comprehensive state regulation over a body, over a policy area like this, worker safety in the workplace, oftentimes there's express preemption by the state legislature. Oftentimes there is an allowance of local jurisdiction in areas that exceed the level of protection that is offered by the state. I'm wondering what the current state of the legislature's action is on this.
Whether there is something pending, Mr.
Or whether there's something that's been recently passed, whether there have been efforts that have failed. I'm interested in knowing what the state of the legislative mind is on whether the body of the law of regulation of the workplace for workplace safety agrees with you that the state regulatory scheme will allow local jurisdictions to regulate as well.
For starters, I base my opinion on state statutes that are already extant. That is, our jurisdiction beginning in Labor Code Section 140, and our more detailed duties set forth beginning at Labor Code Section 6300. Both of those areas contain the comments that I alluded to, and that is that, number one, you can specifically delegate authority for local enforcement of the standards. And let me be precise about this.
And has that been done? Has there been a specific delegation?
To my knowledge, okay. No agreement with a local entity has been entered into to do that. But to be precise about it, What we do is we enforce specific standards with a specific kind of citation that is set forth in the Labor Code, with a specific schedule of fines and penalties that are created by regulation and authorized by the Labor Code. Those are the things that we have exclusive jurisdiction over. The sections that I referred to basically say, if you're enforcing something else, like your zoning ordinance, as in this case, we don't want to get in your way, and that's basically what the Labor Code says, and it's quite specific, and I think, to be honest, relatively clear. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the reasons that I question the opinion of the city attorney is because I know the city of Los Angeles used to have a health services department, and that would suggest that we have the jurisdiction to implement health-related services and public safety services related to health. But we chose not to because of a budgetary concern, but also because we didn't want to duplicate the services of the county. And because we felt that the county would be in a better position to create a more uniform system of health services, given that I believe this occurred under the Reagan administration when he depleted most of our mental health services and severely undercut our ability to provide those services as a city and deferred to the county to do it. I could be wrong on the history of it, but I know that we used to provide health services. So in this particular case, I don't think there's a question of whether the city can do this, can engage in these services or not. I think we can, and I disagree strongly with the city attorney until they can explain to me and convince me that they're correct. But the real question is, at what cost do we provide the service, and how do we do it, and or whether we believe the county should do a better job of what they do. And so, on the one hand, the policy question remains open. We're not going to have a final decision in this committee, nor are we going to present that decision to the council. So today there won't be a recommendation relative to what the city can do to engage in this practice, because we haven't got the report back as to how we would structure such a thing and what kind of staffing issues and what would this program look like, and how are we going to pay for it, and all those questions. On the other hand, I think we know enough to ask the state and the county to do a better job of enforcement with what resources they have. That's not to suggest that we think you have a ton of resources at the state, because Mr. Krikorian and I know well you do not. But it is to hopefully inspire a discussion, or at least some kind of action by perhaps the county to use their resources in a way that impacts on this problem. So what I have put together is a resolution asking the county. Do you have it handy? Because I have it here someplace, but I'm not going to read all the whereases. And Mr. Krikorian, did you get a copy? I don't know. Do you have it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Essentially, it says now, it has a bunch of whereases, and then it says, now therefore be it resolved with the concurrence of the mayor that by adoption of this resolution, the City of Los Angeles supports and encourages California Division of Occupational Health and Safety, or Safety and Health, and Los Angeles County Department of Health to enter into an agreement in writing with the Department of Industrial Relations or an agency authorized by it to enter into such an agreement to create a mechanism of local enforcement in the administration and enforcement of any occupational safety and workplace standards for the adult film industry as covered in Labor Code Section 144. And be it further resolved that with concurrence of the mayor, that by adoption of this resolution, the City of Los Angeles supports the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health amending Section 5193 of Title 8 to specifically include the word condoms as a form of barrier protection, which would be required by adult film performers performing in situations covered by this code. So the purpose of this resolution is to express our support for some kind of agreement between Cal OSHA and the County of Los Angeles, as well as specifying that that condoms are a form of barrier protections that are included in the definition of barrier protection. That is not to say that the city won't do anything with it. I haven't engaged in lengthy discussions with, for example, Mr. Rosendahl, who introduced this measure with regard to how the city proceeds. But I think before we can proceed, we got to get more information in terms of how we would proceed if we felt it was appropriate. Whether or not we impose an additional fee is certainly a part of the question. And then, we would need advice as to who would do the monitoring. I honestly can't see LAPD sitting in every adult film production in the city of Los Angeles. And nor do I necessarily believe we need to have a monitor on site, and maybe we do, I don't know. But who would that be, and at what cost would it be to the city? So those are policy questions that we're not going to be able to get to today. I would ask that the CLA work with the CAO and Film LA to develop a report that covers all of those issues, and that we direct the city attorney to report to this committee to essentially explain their position, which I haven't, which we've heard considerable disagreement with in this committee. So I think, is there anything else that we should do with it?
I think that sounds pretty comprehensive. We are going to hear this again, though, when the city attorney is back to be able to respond to questions.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine.
Absolutely. In the meantime, we can certainly reach out to the city attorney individually. But what kind of time frame do you want to put on this?
I would say 90 days.
90?
Yeah. That way we have an opportunity to also work with the community and prepare a report for you.
Yeah, that's a long time. What?
Well, just one question to Mr. Clark. You said that you were working on a more comprehensive opinion on this. When would you expect that your opinion on this would be finished?
It probably will be finished in the next 2 days.
Oh, great.
But then it has to get its appropriate approvals.
Okay, so would we be able to have access to that within the next 3 weeks or so then?
My intention and initial marching orders are to create an opinion that will be sent to you.
Great.
Thank you. 90 days is a long time. Can we, 60 days?
60 days is good.
Okay, 60 days. And let me explain that we're going through our budget process right now, and that's going to absorb a lot of the energy of the CLA staff at every level, and the CAO staff in particular. And if we want to do the job right, we really want to spend some time on it. But we do want to move forward with it, and I appreciate AIDS Healthcare Foundation for their, in some ways, courageous work, because they're always doing stuff that people don't like, but they say what needs to be said, and sometimes people don't like it. But if you don't hear these things, you get entrenched in positions that simply aren't good for the community. So, thank you for keeping this in our focus, and we will pursue it. Let's see what we can do with it. So with that, I want to say thank you. That matter will go forward as directed, and we can move on to items 4 and 5, which are consent items, and we have no cards on those items. If Mr. Cohen agrees, we can approve those items and send them on to council, which would be the action. We have one public comment card. I'll call again Mr. Bill Raleigh. Okay. Then, hearing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.